From McGuire's Clocks, and today we're going to take a look at this New Haven ladder chain grandfather clock. It's about 120 years old now, give or take a few years. I'm going to go over this one because I've had a number of questions on the basic video with the chimes of why there are chains and winding holes in this one. So this is an American clock, built during the time most all American clocks were built. And the movement inside this is no different than a standard American kitchen clock movement or gay 90s clock movement. Something similar to this that would normally, you would normally wind these two posts right here to wind these springs up. Now, all they've done for this is convert some of the gears to make the pendulum length longer, to run a longer pendulum, and removed the standard wheel in here and put a ratcheted gear in there so you could lay chains over it. That's why there's still winding holes in here. Now, why they didn't just cut those off? Well, if you look inside, because this is a regular American movement that's in here, the pendulum still hangs in front of the clock, which allows the chains to be back behind it. So yes, you can use the chains to wind it. That's typically how most people do it. But it requires you to stop the pendulum, reach behind the pendulum to wind it up. Now, the other way is you could use a crank or a key up here in the dial, which allows you to wind the weights without having to stop the pendulum, or without having to reach behind the pendulum, possibly damaging the suspension spring that the pendulum hangs on. Which in these clocks is not always pleasant to get to because you have to unscrew the dial and have to take the hands off and then fit a new suspension spring if that cracks. So that is why there are winding arbors in this and chains. It's because it's essentially a retrofitted kitchen clock movement that they used for that. I know you've all heard the chimes, but for anyone that hasn't, we'll go over it. This does strike once on the half hour, and then whatever time it is on the hour. And again, since it's a kitchen clock, it's gonna sound like a big kitchen clock. It's got a coil gong with a metal hammer that hits the coil gong. So it's not a big, deep sound. It's a more high, not high pitched, but more tingy sound than a regular grandfather clock. Yeah, that's the New Haven grandfather clock. Just some features on it. It's got two doors. The bottom glass is beveled in it. This one has been completely overhauled, so pivots polished, bushings put into it. Basically anything that it needed, we went through and did it. It keeps really good time, and the case is solid wood, of course, because of when it was made. This one appears to be mahogany. It's got kind of a Gothic top to it with that arched peak. It does have 4 posts all the way around the clock. It's not just these 2 front ones here, which is kind of nice. They didn't cheap out on it. It's a pretty good sized clock for being an American ladder chain. So nice clock, runs very well, keeps good time. Thanks for looking.